Good afternoon, and thanks for the nice welcome. After all the technology and risks and concerns, let me talk about some opportunities, actually. As I got introduced, my name is Armin Fendrich. I run the European operation of Ridecell. Ridecell is a US company. I'll get back to that in a bit. But my talking points will be about, mobility services as the automotive growth engine and what that means, while having some threats as well. A couple of data points to start with. Some analysts are predicting that mobility services companies will actually have a multiple of market capitalization in the year 2030 and beyond compared to the traditional OEMs. This is very much driven by the trends of shared economy and as these services grow over the next couple of years and the next decade. One trend fueling this is actually that, by 2030, it's predicted that more cars actually will be sold to operating fleets for mobility services than actually to private users. I think we're seeing some of these trends already today, but it's going to be accelerated in the next 10, 15 years, and in particular by the 2030 timeframe, which is actually the tipping point where we believe autonomous driving is actually going to kick in as a mass market. Further to that, if we predict, what miles are driven, mobility services accounting for the miles driven, again by 2030, about a 34% range will be in services, whereas probably a quarter of that is actually going to be based on autonomous services as they're getting rolled out. Last data point on mass, again, big numbers. I'm not going to debate if they are kind of, accurate. There's probably some tolerance in there, but still, analysts predict mobility as a service to become a 1.5 trillion business by 2030, and I think the most growth we're going to see actually coming from Europe and China in that time frame. What we see also, and actually it's not just in the market, that actually different industries, different verticals are actually stepping up in this space. We also see this in our own domain. If we look at our investor portfolio, we have investors starting from BMW and Ventures to Denso, who is a tier 1 automotive supplier. Allstate Insurance is an investor. So we see basically various verticals and industries interested in this tremendous change in the market. OEMs, again, if you look at BMW and Daimler, they have been in the car sharing business for quite some time. They made a recent announcement, as you know, about merging these two services now on a global scale. It's all about scale and being ready for the next big wave. We see dealers experimenting with this. In fact, probably in the next 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to make a large announcement in the US with one of the largest dealer groups in the US who are now getting into the mobility services business, launching a car sharing service in one large city in the US to start with. Auto clubs, we launched last year in actually exactly a year ago. We launched with the AAA, the Auto Club in Northern California, a car sharing service. Again, their main issue is, they have been building their business cases around car ownership, and as car ownership goes away, they're looking at new ways to monetize. On top of that, in particular the AAA in the US, their average age of customers in the 55 plus range. With the car sharing service, they're now targeting a user group which is below 30 years old, again securing ongoing customer loyalties over time. Insurance companies I mentioned already, rental companies, and energy companies who certainly have an interest in accelerating their growth path in new dimensions. How do we capitalize, or how do the markets capitalize? As the market is changing from ownership to a shared mobility service, from driven today to self-driving tomorrow, we strongly believe that car sharing and ride sharing actually will merge into one autonomous mobility service over time. We also believe, because of this, that the car sharing companies today who are actually embracing that are very well positioned to play a key role in that area. This is for various reasons. Car sharing requires a lot of operational experience, maintenance, fleet management, adding the autonomous technology, which we heard about, I think, part of this afternoon already about, again, brings these two things together. And we believe that, again, the car sharing companies are very well positioned to do that. If we look at the way where, services are monetized today, I take 3 examples here. We know all car sharing, it could be a free floating, a drive now, a car to go car sharing service. You typically pay per minute or per mile, depending on the business model or the business case. We have now, with all the Uber and Lyft services around the globe, business cases where there's micro rentals. These drivers want to rent their cars for peak hours, let's say in the morning for 3 hours, in the afternoon and the evening for a couple of hours, but not for a month or for a year. So we see kind of car sharing as part of a micro rental use case. Then obviously the ride sharing use case per se, where you charge a fee per distance. And I think the core to enable all these and actually scale them profitably is managing these services on one platform and enabling different services at different points in time during the week, during the day, or during the month. In fact, with BMW in the US, who is one of our customers, which the Reach Now service, we do empower 5 different services today already. So you can have a free-floating car sharing service. From the same fleet, they offer you a on-demand valet service. So you actually book a car and it's being delivered to your door. On Friday evenings, they repurpose a part of the fleet for ride sharing, and then they have drivers who actually offer rides to other customers. After the weekend, these cars are being brought back into the car sharing service when there's peak demand on a Monday morning again. So this is driving utilization and making these services actually, driving profitability. One step further, again, in the autonomous ride-hailing use case, if you then take the driver out of the equation, who is the largest cost at the end of the day, we're actually going to be able to see, cost per mile, which are in the low 25 to 30 cent per mile area. And that's where mass adoption by the consumers will happen. A few words about Ridecell. Again, Ridecell, headquartered in San Francisco, founded in 2009. We're powering multiple services across the globe. We started in Europe about 18 months ago, launched a large service in Madrid a couple of months ago. I'll get back to that in more detail in a moment. And we are the platform who actually enables our operators to run multiple services from within the same number of assets. There's an app, obviously, which we provide as a white label solution, where you actually expose to different use cases, the end user. Again, this is an example, or a white label example of what BMW does with us in Seattle. As a consumer, you actually get exposed to the different services which are available to you. This could be the free-floating consumer service. This could be a ride-hailing service on a Friday evening. This could be a car-sharing service of a residential area you're living at, or a corporate car sharing. So the system actually dynamically loads the services available to you into the application for usage. The core is what we call our operations engine. This is really, I think, where we excel, and enabling basically the other use cases. And in fact, when you think autonomous, one of the very important things, and I think it has been mentioned earlier on this afternoon already, fleet management becomes a much more important asset task because when you look into a ride-hailing use case today, you have a driver. The driver owns the car. The driver rents the car. The driver cleans the car. The driver maintains the car. In an autonomous scenario, you don't have a driver anymore to taking care of that. So fleet management and an automated way to do that is going to be a critical part of the operation to run such a service. So with the platform, we enable every major use case today. Again, we have very different deployments amongst different customers. Again, the most prominent one is the traditional on-demand, A to B car sharing service. We have residential services. We have dealers like Volkswagen Group, the Skoda Group in Poland, who is experimenting with a dealer-based, station-based service. Again, also, what do dealers do in 10, 15 years when fleets are electrified, when there's no oil change anymore, and what are their new business models moving forward? So pretty much all major use cases can be enabled through the platform. A couple of concrete examples. As I mentioned, BMW is a Reach Now service in the US. They're operating in 3 cities today. They have over 500,000 rentals in 12 months. Just as a data point, Maven, which is GM's service, in 13 cities active, they only have about 40,000 rentals. So again, operational efficiency and a platform to enable that is key for success. I mentioned earlier the AAA, they launched this new cool service called Gig in the Berkeley and Oakland area exactly a year ago. It's a free-floating service. It's a Toyota Prius with a bike rack, so it's actually a very visible and recognizable car from a coloring and overall setup point of view. We had some interesting, I think, experience with them. Their sister club, actually, up in British Columbia, launched a very similar service with the same cars with one of our competitors' products. But the guys in Berkeley see 5 times the utilization which their sister club has been in British Columbia. So again, a testament for the efficiency of the platform and how important it is to actually drive utilization. And they just, early this year, they just doubled the fleet now, because the kind of tricky part is with utilization is at some point when your utilization gets to 25–30% range, you're going to have a demand-supply issue. So at that point, you actually have to in-fleet more vehicles. And then you're going to have a short dip in utilization for the first couple of weeks and months until I think the system is kind of self-servicing again. But again, a very, very successful deployment. And as I mentioned earlier, briefly, last December, we launched our first large-scale service in Europe. This is actually a joint venture between Ferrovial Group, which is a large Spanish public infrastructure and services company. In fact, they build airports. They actually operate a T5 at Heathrow Airport. So that's kind of their business. They're also looking into, how does mobility, new mobility change their business model in the future? So they started this joint venture with Renault. It's a fleet of 500 vehicles, all electric, in Madrid. And we're seeing in month 5 now, we're seeing rentals peaking at 5,000 rentals a day already, which is now has become very quickly our second largest deployment in a very short period of time. What we do provide is actually a tool chain of different tools to run these services. Our customers can go all the way end to end from the consumer application, like these previous customers have done, but also we're enabling others to actually take just bits and pieces of our platform to optimize their service. In fact, you all know that Waymo has got their autonomous license in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. Where they're running the fleet currently with, I think, Fiat Chrysler Odysseys and soon, I think, some nice looking I-Paces from JLR. While they focus on, let's say, the end user experience and the autonomy of the car, they're actually using our technology to manage that fleet. Because it's almost has been an afterthought of them, how do we actually service these 20,000 vehicles at some point? They're going to run out of battery. They need recharging. They're going to have a flat tire. They're going to need cleaning, right? So enabling that with an operation center behind that is core to our business. In order for us to further enhance our technology stack, we actually acquired a company last year, October. It was a startup based in San Jose, again, Silicon Valley. They have been running a service now for over a year with these kind of electric golf carts on private campus. It's a fully commercial service, actually, at the Santa Clara University. have done over 3,000 rides, runs fully operational 5 days a week. And again, the technology Auro has provided is basically the software stack to run and manage these vehicles. And we're now combining that with our backend for, again, the autonomous fleet management use case moving forward. Briefly, as I mentioned in a few sentences earlier, autonomous fleets need a lot of, I think, fleet management at the same time. You need to direct vehicles back to your operation center, again, for cleaning, for recharging. You may have a flat tire, you need to dispatch a service technician to actually change the tire. So having an efficient operating center to do these kind of things is going to be key for autonomous ride-hailing as the market moves on. We are here to engage. Happy to talk to anyone who is interested in more detail. And thank you for your attention.